Hello and welcome to this edition of Second Opinion. When someone talks about the defense industry, we usually think of tanks, fighter jets, and helicopters or warships. But one of the most important weapons is the humble assault rifle. This here is INSAS, the first and so far only real Indian assault rifle in use since the 1990s. And this one here is a kitted up version. Looks cool, right? Rather like mine here. This is not an INSAS, nor for that matter an AK. It's a Czech VZ58. But the furnishings, the fancy dress, the polymer magazine, the grip, these are all made, just like those and the INSAS, by the same companies in Israel and the United States. But then, is the fancy dress for INSAS going to be enough? As we will see here on Second Opinion, more, much more, can be done. The first question to answer is straightforward. Instead of following up INSAS, why did India choose two problematic new assault rifles, using ammunition calibers which the manufacturers of those rifles themselves are kicking out? First of all, we must get rid of bad PR about INSAS, fed by lobby groups to people who don't really know the difference between a gun and a rifle. The impact of this manipulated PR, like about much else which is made in India, lurks unfortunately to this day in the back of many heads, even in India. That good stuff cannot be made in India unless it is jugaad. A bit patronizing, that term to me, probably stupid even when used, as it has by some Indian journalists, will be seeing that, in terms of weapons used by frontline Indian soldiers. But the crux of the matter is that India cannot call itself Atmanirbhar, self-reliant, if it does not make and use its own assault rifle. Let's see why. Here is a clip from Platoon, Oliver Stone's hit movie in the 1980s about the United States and Vietnam. Now close your eyes and imagine this scenario. An Indian platoon, 32 soldiers, let's say from 2 para, somewhere far away. Think Africa, Sierra Leone, the year 2000, when the Indian Army rescued more than 200 hostages from rebels of the RUF. Now let's look at something tricky. The Indians are ambushed. They are cornered deep in enemy territory in a firefight with RUF rebels which lasts several hours. And their INSAS rifles overheat, jam, shoot up all over the place. And because of this, because of their rifles failing, paratroopers get killed. Can you imagine this? We would still be talking about it 25 years later. But we don't, because it isn't true. The Indian Army did its job on a very tough overseas mission. So did their INSAS rifles. But this was sadly not to be the case with the German army in Afghanistan and with their rifles. And this did happen 10 years after the Indians went to Sierra Leone. The Germans were using not INSAS but G36 rifles made in Germany. It was Good Friday, April the 2nd, 2010 in northern Afghanistan. And there was a German army platoon, 32 paratroopers. They were ambushed by the Taliban right outside Kunduz. During the shootout, their G36 rifles overheated. The barrels drooped. Yes, drooped. This happened. The bullets flew everywhere, and several German paratroopers were killed. It was a tragedy and a scandal. Yes, the G36, made in Germany, the symbol of top-of-the-line industrial technology, failed miserably. There are many theories about what exactly went wrong with the G36, but that is not our concern here. What I wish to point out is two things. One, INSAS worked in Sierra Leone. The German G36s in Afghanistan did not. And two, Indian-made stuff does not necessarily mess up. That cliche did its rounds. And was not just INSAS. The cliche was held up by the likes of Britain's late Prince Philip, King Charles's father. If I must be polite, a Greek-born German racist. Impolitely, I would call him something else. True enough, the INSAS did have problems, like other rifles. But then, keep in mind, the Indian military functions routinely in conditions no other army in the world faces. From the humid jungles of the northeast to the sandy beaches of the Andamans. From minus 50 degrees Celsius at 20,000 feet in Siachen to plus 50 degrees in the deserts of Thar. And everywhere, the INSAS did its job. Yes, some soldiers complained, and the Indian media picked it up, spread it like wildfire. That's how it works in India, all experts, ready to pass around the bad news, often minus context. Had these chaps done their homework, checked what other assault rifles INSAS peers had gone through, like the G36, their conclusions may have been different. No, as far as assault rifles go, forget the G36. Even the world's best funded PR machine, the United States Army, could not hide its own mess up with the M16 in Vietnam. There were congressional inquiries about it. The truth is that every rifle has occasional troubles, and everyone goes on to solve them. Even the Germans, or the British for that matter, who still have their SA-80 in service and plan to do so in the years to come, in spite of troubles. So why then did India fail to develop a successor to the INSAS and the tired but trusty old AKs which plugged gaps for some time? Instead, what did it choose? Not one, but two infantry rifles. The first, a less tired new AK, the 203, and the second, a very pricey American rifle. The brand new Indian AK factory seems to be hostage to Russia's needs in Ukraine. But wait a minute, let's look at our second shiny new rifle. The SIG Sauer 716, American, sort of. SIG, based in New Hampshire, is originally a Swiss company set up in Germany to bypass Swiss restrictions on exporting arms. Interestingly, the SIG 716 shares some lineage with the HK416 from Germany's Heckler & Koch, which made the troubled G36, the one which had very serious problems in Kunduz, Afghanistan. One of the key designers of both the HK and SIG is Robert Hurt, a gun genius, who now works for Heinel, another German weapon manufacturer, which has been awarded the contract for the G36's successor, but faces loads of problems and issues as its parent company is not German, not European, not American, but from the UAE. Oof, complex, yes. There are patent issues too involving Robert Hurt, Heinel and Heckler & Koch. You get this. This is the problem about getting tangled up in gun politics, international gun politics. We should have made our own. Then comes something even more cute. The Americans sent India the SIG without sights. Well, that's how many guns are sold these days. My Ruger PC-9, for instance, or this CZ527, the sights come separately. Someone forgot about that. And then a media expert in India helpfully suggested that India do some jugaad on the SIG, sending a soldier to battle with a jugaad gun sight. People have obviously forgotten 1962. So, ye kahan aa gaye hum? Just how did India get here? For something as basic as an infantry assault rifle. We make 40,000-ton aircraft carriers, an active radar-equipped combat jet with one of the highest composite contents ever. We then need to go wander around abroad looking for a rifle. Let's take two peer countries, China and Turkey. These two don't just make their own assault rifles. They sell their stuff outside, even in the West. Here's Chinese sales in the US, an AK, their 86 from Norinco, A bullpup like the QBZ-95, which they have in active service. And here's in Switzerland, a Chinese clone. Yes, you got it right. A made-in-China copy of a US M4 carbine. Turkey's semi-auto shotguns are popular. Here's a 12 gauge in Belgium. I didn't intend to see an online gun peep show with you, but what I want to say loud and clear is that while we import assault rifles for our soldiers, the Turks and Chinese have taken care of their basic needs, more than taken care. Assault rifles are the foundation, the cornerstone of any self-respecting military. For an army, a soldier's personal weapon is like roti and kapra. Not having one's own is like a house without a front door. Are we really in a position where our 1.5 million soldiers have to trust their lives with a rifle made by someone else? One need not have to be an expert to get the very bad vastu here. Who got us into this? Once upon a time, we had babus doing the gun choosing. Now we have private sector warriors, summer school graduates from Harvard or the Adani and Ambani Academies, with a little stint on the side at Boston Consulting or KPMG. Apart from the question about the missing sights on the SIGs, no one told them that modern Western assault rifles need high-end ammo, just like high-end sports cars need high-octane fuel. I don't have a Ferrari, not yet. Take my 170 horsepower motorbike. It runs beautifully, but fill the thing with not that good petrol and it begins to sound like it has whooping cough. So just wait and see how many of these American 716 Wonder Toys get messed up because of lousy ammo. Those Wonder Boys who chose the Wonder Toy could have at least looked around some online forums. Soon we're going to hear demands for a new ammo factory. It will be expensive. Ammunition for nervy beasts like the 716 is not cheap. Indeed, expensive ammunition is good for armies like the US who have no budget problems, or those in Europe who don't need to do much shooting because they do not fight in real conflicts or run behind the US like marching Boy Scouts. And even then, look what happened to the poor Germans in Afghanistan when they got into a real fight, or to the Ukrainians with Western ammo fighting the Russians. Fighting Russians using this sort of round. So dirty, they're not allowed onto EU shooting ranges due to European environmental regulations, but which are cheap and plentiful. A factor far more important than shiny new stuff in real war. Ask a soldier. Ask any soldier. This is exactly how the Russians play, with cheap and abundant stuff, good enough for the job and more than enough in supply. They have a very long tradition there. But there's more questionable news on the other side. The US seems to be moving on, and like the Pied Piper, others, many others, will surely follow. There are growing doubts about the future of the 7.62 NATO round, which the SIG 716 fires, and which our wonderkins went and bought. The US is kicking out 5.56 NATO too. Next generation ammo for the US seems to be 6.8 by 51. Look at this report from March. As you see, 6.8 is supposed to outperform both 5.56 and 7.62 NATO, which India is left with. And guess who got the contract for 6.8? Sig Sauer, who gave our geniuses the 716. The 6.8 by 51 round has in fact been baptized Sig Fury. Yes, Sig Fury will become a NATO caliber, the NATO caliber, and one must take a quick look at that story too to learn lessons. Military small arms is a very complex and very messy business. 7.62 NATO was a sleight of hand in the 1950s after Belgium, by far the El Dorado of small arms, came up with the legendary FAL, the Fusil Automatique Léger, or the light automatic gun. which India had used before the INSAS when it was called the Ishapur. The FAL was at first meant to shoot 7.92 by 33 Kurz rounds, designed for the German STG Sturmgewehr 44, which many considered to be the first real assault rifle. Kurz caliber was however dropped after the British popped up with their own 280 7.62 by 43 round. The Belgians went along. It was Britain which, after all, had created their country. Yes, gun and ammo choice is politics, power politics, and India needs to keep this in mind. But it was not just Britain and Belgium. As I said, power politics. Both Belgium and Britain's big brother, the US, had other plans for them. The Americans stipulated their own caliber, not Kurz or the 280 from Britain. They came up with, yes, you got it, 7.62 by 51, which they said would be the best thing for the Belgian FAL. The poor Belgians went along, redesigning the FAL for the US ammo, but then all of a sudden, the Americans dropped both the Belgians and FAL for their own M14, a rifle which was to be used for a very short period of time with 7.62 ammo, before the M16 came along with lighter 5.56 by 45 rounds. 5.56 by 45 would become a standard for NATO and would also be used later by INSAS. Now we have the same kind of story being written out with 6.8. There's a lot of push. Europe will follow suit. They have no choice. Back in India, what the Indian Army is left with is not just the SIG, a US rifle as nervous as a racehorse, but a to-be-retired 7.62 by 51 round, as well as a Russian rifle, the AK-203, which uses 7.62 by 39, a caliber being retired in Russia. Here's the new Russian AK-12, caliber 5.45 by 39, which has already been in use for some time on the AK-74. Indeed, the Indian Army is becoming a bit like a retirement plan for American and Russian rifles and ammunition. Remember the Standard 2000? But there is one exciting possibility. How about giving INSAS a new lease of life? Not simply by kitting it up, like these INSAS upgrades. They do look cool, no question, but that's about it. Aside from the Picatinny rail to mount optics and other accessories, the rest of the stuff could be for a fancy dress party. A very expensive fancy dress party, I'm sure. Let's look at what you can buy them for in the US, for my VZ58. Prices for the INSAS would be very similar. Here we go. The handguard with the rail, the thing which is really needed, costs $80. Even if you throw in all the other extras, the stock, $65, the pistol grip, $35, the magazine, $15, vertical grip, $45, the muzzle brake, another $43. What do you have in total? About $300, some 25,000 Indian rupees. And these, remember, are US consumer market prices, made in India for a massive buyer like the Indian military or paramilitary. It would be a quarter or say a third. Let's think of about 10,000 rupees. And here they all are on my VZ58. The handguard with the rail, the stock, the pistol grip, the magazine, the vertical grip, the brake here up front, all for some $300, remember? But rather than fancy dress, how about something new inside? Just like Intel says. For instance, a wholly new and potentially much more effective caliber for the Indian Army. One reason, we can argue about this for a week, but well, one of the reasons for getting rid of INSAS was that the 5.56 caliber is small. It was designed to wound, not kill. Tie down a soldier's bodies to take care of him until he could be evacuated. As I said, one can argue for a week. But clearly, one of the questions in hitting something or someone is range. I don't think anyone would argue that there's a distance below which any bullet will kill, and one over which it will not even wound. On paper, the effective range of 5.56 is 650 to even 700 yards. But in reality, at over 300 yards, 5.56 does very little damage. One can measure such damage potential in foot-pounds of kinetic energy. And as we'll soon see, at 400 yards, 5.56 is carrying below 300 foot-pounds. Just for comparison, you need a minimum 350 foot-pounds, 50 more than that, to hunt birds in Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains. In today's battlefields, where more and more soldiers have ballistic vests and use high-powered scopes, this may indeed be a problem, the low kill potential of the 5.56, which is why India chose 7.62 by 51, right? But there are other alternatives below 7.62, which could do the power job at a greater distance, a much greater distance than 5.56. In fact, almost as much as 7.62 NATO. The best known are 6 and 6.5 millimeter. There are different kinds of ammo in these two calibers, ARC for advanced rifle cartridge and Creedmoor, named after a psychiatric hospital in New York. But the one I like most is 6.5 millimeter Grendel, named after a mythic creature of darkness from the Saxon epic poem Beowulf. Now, why do I like this? Well, because the INSAS rifle can be converted to this caliber for a relatively low price. Let's now look at 6.5 Grendel on the top row. At 400 yards, its 1037 foot-pounds energy is not just 3.5 times more than 5.56, but only very slightly behind the 7.62 NATO round. The Grendel also bleeds energy much less quickly than 7.62 NATO, starting out at 0 feet as it exits the barrel with 1,832 foot-pounds, 50% less than the 7.62 NATO. What this means is that the Grendel has less brutal recoil as a soldier shoots, and then almost equal performance at 300 yards and more. And how does Grendel fare against the 7.62 by 39? Well, higher recoil clearly, 1,832 foot-pounds exits compared to 1,445, but not as much as the 7.62 NATO. On the other hand, at 400 yards, it has double the kinetic energy of the Russian round. Grendel by far will therefore be a better bet than either of the two calibers we have ended up with. It's also lighter. So you may ask, why not simply go with the Americans to 6.8 Sig Fury, which they surely have compared to Grendel? A good question. There are two answers. US and NATO demand for the Fury will be huge. Secondly, and this is critical, INSAS cannot be converted to 6.8, but it can be to 6.5 Grendel, which was originally designed for the AR-15 platform, which fires 5.56 by 45, just like INSAS. On its own, the price of a Grendel rifle is similar to a SIG 716, like it with no sights. But a conversion kit to Grendel from a 5.56 AR is a third or fourth the cost, just over $500. And this comes with all the fancy dress, remember, which we saw, the rail, pistol grip, magazine, which costs $300. All that will be included in the final price for $500. A Grendel kit for the INSAS could be manufactured in India with the extras, probably for half this price. Even at 2/3, it would still be less than 35,000 rupees. That would not be jugaad. It would be a strategic choice for giving hundreds of thousands of INSAS rifles a new lease of life, with performance at longer range better than the AK and almost on par with the SIG. It would also give India self-respect of providing its army an Indian rifle, not something handed down from Daddy Russia or Mummy America. Thanks for watching this edition of Second Opinion, and give me a like and subscribe to the program if you enjoyed it. Thank you again and goodbye.